Okay, so chapter 18, endocrine system. The most important thing in this part, the communication between cells, two cells, is important. Is it endocrine? Is it exocrine? Is it paracrine? This is one thing. The other thing is, in the first part specifically, is what's the nature? Is it protein? If it is protein in nature or amino acid, it will work on the extracellular receptors in the membrane. If it is lipid or anything lipid derivatives, it will cross the membrane and go inside of the cell to work on intracellular receptor, whether it is in the cytoplasm or it is in the nucleus. And you have to ask yourself, anytime you see an enzyme, beside the function, is it protein? Is it lipid? Protein work outside, lipid will work inside. So this is the most important thing about the whole first part. So we talked about this. This is receptors, and you will have an intermediate when something that's protein in nature or amino acids will go to the membrane receptors, and it will start to activate a second messenger. And this is something important to know. The first messenger is in the receptor. The second messenger is something else that mediates, and this can be cyclic AMP or cyclic GMP and calcium. And this is important to remember. Amplification is recruiting more cells, more receptors to work, versus downregulation, which is opposite. Upregulation versus downregulation. G protein is another messenger or another part in the process of transmitting the signal. So G protein will use either cyclic AMP or cyclic GMP. So between the receptors and the second messenger, there is G protein. The enzyme that works through this is adenyl cyclase. You need to remember all enzymes. Any enzyme that you see, we have only a couple of them, but you need to know the receptors anyway. I mean the enzymes. So what's adenyl cyclase? This is an enzyme that converts ATP to cyclic AMP. Kinase is the enzyme that activates the cyclic AMP. So it's an activator. So steroid hormone work inside. Protein hormones will work outside. And this can save you for the first almost 60 slides. This is what I want you to know. Okay? Is it clear? In the first part, which is like third of the chapter, all what I want you to know is what's the nature, and this will tell you what is the job or how you're going to react. Protein versus lipids. So you're saving more than thirds of this chapter already. Regulatory hormones, there is the way of secretion. It can be pulse or continuous. Pulse is usually for more secretion. The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, there is a slide, and I'm going through this portal system. This is connecting the hypothalamus to the pituitary gland. This is important. Hypophyseal portal system, that's important. And the releasing inhibiting hormones. Slide 83. This is summarizing that, and this is very important. The slide in the page 83, about half or more than half. So you need to know, like TRH from the hypothalamus will stimulate the TSH in the pituitary gland that will go to the thyroid gland to produce thyroid. So memorize this table. You have to know this. So that's releasing and inhibiting hormones. The next part, you actually need to know the cell as you go. By the way, I'm slide 92 now, and I only focused on a couple of things, okay? So if you follow what I'm talking about, you will know what's more important than and what's less important, okay? The first 60, just the nature and how do you work. The next part, the hormones, you need to know the function, okay? Dysfunction, if any, and then the control. And which cells specifically secrete. Like sustentacular cells, for example, is responsible for the maturation of the sperm. and this is the by stimulation of FSH, and inhibin will be released. On the other hand, LH, for example, will cause ovulation and release of progestin. Prolactin, there is prolactin stimulating and prolactin inhibiting. What mediates the function of the growth hormone? What is the intermediate in the action of the growth hormone? Somato? Something? Medine. Somatomedine. And what's the inhibitor of growth hormone? Prolactin, we talked about this. Growth hormone, what stimulate and what inhibit? Melanocyte stimulating hormone, the other name for it, and it's inhibited by dopamine. So always know each hormone, what stimulate the release of the hormone, what inhibit the release of the hormone, what's the function of the hormone. And this is, by the way, this is less than half of the chapter. Okay, that's concerning this. Posterior pituitary, supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei. You have to know ADH and oxytocin, which cell secrete what? Which nucleus secrete what? Supraoptic secrete ADH, paraventricular secrete oxytocin. What's the function of ADH? Antidiuretic. It's inhibited by alcohol. Oxytocin, contractor. Contract, it's for contraction. So it contracts the uterus during delivery, it contracts the milk during breastfeeding. Thyroid glands, most important thing to know, increase overall metabolism. Parathyroid, parathyroid hormone, increase calcium. Calcium homeostasis is important. Which hormone increase? Which hormone decrease? Which hormone increase? Parathyroid hormone. Which hormone decrease? Calcitonin. Okay? These tables are important. When you see a table like this in slide 109, there's a table talking about the thyroid and parathyroid and where exactly it is secreted from. This is important. Okay? Adrenal gland, there is a table too that's important in slide 111, and this is talking about what is secreted from the medulla, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and what's secreting from the cortex, which is zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. Each zone will secrete something that you need to know. In the pancreas, alpha cell, beta cell, delta cell, and F cell. What's the most important? Alpha and beta. Alpha cell secrete insulin, beta cell secrete glucagon. What's the insulin function? Increase or decrease glucose? Insulin? Decrease glucose level in the blood. How about glucagon? Increase. It's the opposite. Calcitriol, this is what stimulates the calcium and phosphate absorption in the digestive system, and you need to remember that. Calcitriol, another thing. Renin-angiotensin system, very important to remember. Is it clear? This is in the videos, but also remember that every single part, there is a diagram that page or slide 117 that describe the process. You have to memorize this figure. It's explaining exactly what you need to know. Secretions from the heart, natriuretic peptides. It's natriuresis, means decrease the blood volume by natriuresis, meaning sodium will be lost in the urine and more water lost in the urine and so on. And this is the opposite of angiotensin 2. Thymus secrete thymosin, testis, interstitial cells secrete testosterone, and inhibin is secreted from the sustentacular cells. You have to remember the cells. Sustentacular cells secrete inhibin. Interstitial cell, testosterone. Ovaries will secrete estrogen. At ovulation, the corpus luteum secrete progestin or progesterone. Leptin, this is from adipose tissue. This will suppress the appetite. Resistin, reduce insulin sensitivity. This is what we need to focus on. The hormonal interaction, is it agonist, is it antagonist, or synergist, or permissive, or integrative? This is something that you need to know. Hormones important for growth. You have to remember this. I can ask you, which of the following does not stimulate the growth, or which of the following stimulate the growth. You have to memorize these hormones: growth hormone, thyroid hormone, insulin, parathyroid hormone, calcitriol, and reproductive hormones. Insulin, the mechanism of insulin, I want you to know too. How does it decrease the glucose in the blood? It pushes it inside the cells. This is the mechanism. Adaptation syndrome, you need to know that. Stress response, this is the first part that's mediated by epinephrine, which is the alarm phase. The second phase, which is resistance, this is if it is prolonged, and this is mediated by glucocorticoids, resistant phase, and then exhaustion phase, which is complete failure. Aging, everything deteriorates. Disorders can be primary, which is from the organ itself, or can be secondary, which is from somewhere else that affect the organ. Secondary is from somewhere else, like anything, if this is the gland, anything above or under, if the reason is coming from above or under, that's called secondary. If the organ itself, thyroid gland itself is bad, destroyed, this is primary. If the thyroid is okay, there is no problem, but it does not receive something from the hypothalamus stimulation, or it does not receive from under, this is called secondary. Last slide, extremely important. Let me go through it real quick in a minute, so you know what we're talking about. I'm talking about gigantism versus acromegaly. I don't remember if I talked about this or not, but this is I'm going to use from this, so you need to understand it. What's the difference between gigantism and acromegaly? Both of them are increase the size of the body. What's the difference? Gigantism is if the growth hormone increase in childhood. Acromegaly, if a growth hormone increased in adult. So if it's happening in children, because the child is still growing, so it's kind of homogeneous. So the person looks okay, but huge. No discrepancy, nothing like the nose is huge versus something else. No. Everything is symmetrical, it's okay, but huge. So gigantism is growth hormone, increased growth hormone in childhood. Acromegaly is increased growth hormone after puberty. So what's happening now? Are you getting taller? No. There are certain parts that can still be affected by the increase of the growth hormone, which is the forehead, the nose, the mandible, the toes, the fingers. These things are called independent parts. These can still grow, but you cannot get taller or something like that. And the example for that is Abraham Lincoln. Look at the picture, look at his picture, and this will describe acromegaly. Abraham Lincoln. Dwarfism is exactly the opposite of gigantism. Exactly the opposite. It's decreased growth hormone during childhood. And the person will be a dwarf, meaning he will be very tiny. He looks okay, but everything is smaller. Rickets versus osteomalacia versus osteoporosis. We need to understand that. What's the difference? Rickets, osteomalacia, same thing. Both of them are decreased vitamin D. If decreased vitamin D in childhood, you call it rickets. If it decreases after puberty, you call it osteomalacia. Do you get the difference? Osteoporosis have nothing to do with this. Even though it sounds similar, it's not. Okay, so rickets, decreased vitamin A in childhood. The bone will be flexible, it will be weaker, so it starts to bend, give you that shape. If that happened in adulthood, can we get something similar to rickets? Yes. Osteomalacia is like rickets in adults. So if we didn't get enough vitamin D, we'll still get something, it's milder, but still the bones will be bending, it's kind of. So you can call it, this is not a scientific name. You can call osteomalacia the rickets of the adults. Okay? It's not scientific, but just to remember it. Osteoporosis have nothing to do with this. Osteoporosis is the bones are porous. Osteoporosis, the porous bone. And this happens in ladies getting older after menopause because estrogen goes down. When estrogen is okay before menopause, it lay calcium in the bone and it keeps the bone strong. Later on, estrogen decline, and the bone will become weaker, porous, less calcium. So any fall or any little accident or something can get huge fracture. And this is osteoporosis. It is something in the bone, but it have nothing to do with vitamin D. It's hormonal. It's estrogen. Last two things, diabetes mellitus versus diabetes insipidus. What's the difference? Both of them are diabetes. What's diabetes? Polyuria, polydipsia. Polyuria means a lot of urine. Polydipsia means a lot of drinking. You see yourself the whole day long, drink water, go to the bathroom. Drink water, go to the bathroom. Polydipsia, polyuria. You're always thirsty, you always go to the bathroom. Drink more, go to the bathroom more. Okay? Both of them. What's the difference then? The reason is different. Diabetes mellitus is because of decreased insulin. You don't have enough insulin. There is primary and there is secondary. If you are a child, you don't have enough insulin. If you're adult, the insulin is there, but the cells are not responsive to that insulin. All right? In both cases anyway, the glucose level will increase, and this is called hyperglycemia, and this will go in the urine, followed by water, and this what explain why you're urinating a lot, and when you urinate a lot, you drink a lot. It's diabetes insipidus, the last one, still diabetes, still polydipsia, polyuria, but the reason is you do not have enough ADH. Okay? So what happened in this is the ADH, antidiuretic hormone, it's supposed to be antidiuresis. So it's supposed to save your water. If you don't have enough ADH, so you will not, the ADH should work on the kidney. You don't work on the kidney, you urinate a lot, and you drink a lot. Get this? So diabetes, polydipsia, polyuria, polydipsia, polyuria. If it is because of low insulin, increased glucose, mellitus. If it is because of decreased ADH, that will be insipidus. And that's it for this chapter.